Friends, as we have turned our eyes and the movement of our worship locates us firmly in the season of Lent, this is the first Sunday where we begin this journey of Lent. Firstly, we are told in the scriptures that Jesus is sent out by the Spirit to spend 40 days in the wilderness. And that should already have some alarm bells for you as we enter these 40 days of Lent. Now, every year I get some person who comes to me on the side and says, I worked it out and there's actually 46 days between Ash Wednesday and Easter Saturday, as if I didn't count them correctly. And then I usually smile and say, yes, there are 46 days between Ash Wednesday and Easter Saturday. But according to the Christian calendar and tradition, we don't count the Sundays because they are meant to be mini Easters, many times of celebration. When people are venturing to give something up for Lent, as has been the tradition over the years, although I think it seems to be a bit of a dying tradition, giving up Coke and chocolates and cake and all those lovely things, I used to say to people, well, you only have to give it up between Monday and Saturday. As a technicality, you could have it on the Sunday because those are supposed to be mini Easters. Many a person's face has lit up at this technicality. So yes, we find ourselves in these 40 days of Lent. And it does line up with the 40 days that Jesus spends in the wilderness. For the first audience who was hearing this story or reading it, they would have immediately made the connection to the 40 days or the 40 years that the Israelites spent in the desert. After God has raised up Moses and taken them into the desert, it was 40 years that they had spent on the way to the promised land. Furthermore, for first audiences and even us, it should echo for us this particular narrative being linked with that original temptation that is found in Genesis, where Adam and Eve are in the garden in that first story. The temptation for us is that if you have given up something for Lent, isn't it funny how when you decide to go on a diet or give something up for Lent, that's all you can see, and that's all that anybody ever wants to offer you. I baked this lovely chocolate cake that I thought I would share with you. That's what I've given up for Lent. Or I was at the shops and bought some chocolates. Here, have one. That's what I've given up for Lent. It's the two things, the 40 days and the temptation, that fill this story this morning. In previous first Lent Sundays, I've preached on one or both of those issues. But when I came to preparing for today, I realized that there was a deeper issue that is actually at play in all of these narratives as they connect to our one this morning. And that is the issue of trust. That is the issue of trust. And the question of, can God be trusted? we arrive at the narrative for today. Jesus, who's come out of 40 days in the wilderness. He's tired and he's famished, when suddenly our friend, in inverted commas, appears to test Jesus' trust in God. Can you trust God to provide for you bread after you have been fasting for 40 days? Can you trust God to protect you? Let's see if He really cares about you. Let's put that trust to the test by flinging yourself off the top of the temple. Do you trust God enough to put aside all of your human desires of wealth, fame, and fortune to be led upon a very narrow path? Is the final temptation of Jesus. Again, asking that question, can God be trusted to love, provide, and protect Jesus? Now, when we consider Jesus' temptation, there's a sense in us that, well, this is God's only Son. There isn't much to be tempted in Jesus at this point. Surely it's a given that Jesus trusts God. Perhaps it seems like a pointless exercise, this between Jesus and the devil. But I want us to remember that Jesus has the ultimate test waiting for him. His trust in God. For he must follow God's plan to be given over into the hands of those who will not only kill him, but torture him. He must follow God's plan of him dying on the cross, trusting that God will raise him from the dead. Jesus' trust in God is pivotal to the story that we have in the gospel message. So the question comes to you and I. On this very first Sunday in Lent, can God be trusted to love, provide, and protect us? Do we trust God for those things? Will we be given into temptation, putting our trust in other things, in worldly things, in earthly things? Do our lives tell the story to others that God is trustworthy and true to his word? What kind of fallbacks have we got in place just in case God isn't trustworthy? Friends, I invite you during this time of Lent, as we search out in our hearts whether we trust God enough for our everyday needs and ultimately for our eternal lives. Can God be trusted like 2-year-old Josh trusted us, Gordon and I, to catch him at every turn. Amen.